Hello, everyone. I'm Patrick Klintbom, so I'm the chair of the steering committee of Bioenergy. I also will be moderating today. And with us here we have Timo Ritonumi from the Finnish Ministry of Economic Affairs and Employment. You're also the chair of the Implementation Working Group 8, and you're also head of the Set Plan Steering Group. Your focus will be on resilience in energy supply and potential contributions from bioenergy. We also have with us here two colleagues from RISE that will also give their perspective. So it's David Blomberg-Satton, focusing on how research, innovation, and stakeholder collaboration can strengthen the contribution to system resilience. And then finally, Marcus. And after these presentations, we will have possibility to ask questions. So I hope this will be a fruitful event and that we can have a fruitful discussion on this subject. So I will make a short, let's say, introduction. We can take the next slide. The agenda is today. First I will introduce, and then we have a presentation from Timo, then from David, and then Marcus Millinger, also from RISE, has his presentation, and then we will have a summary and discussion ending at 2:00 sharp, or if we ready before that. So this is the overall agenda we have here today. So, and our topic is to discuss how and in what context bioenergy can be one of the keys to the European resilience, which we very much need to work on. But I will soon introduce you to the subject of today. So yeah, let's go forward to the next slide. I will introduce here shortly this topic, and you already know who I am, but we can take the next slide. So I will start. Okay. So the concept of resilience, then, this is not something new. It's something that has been around for a while. What has happened is that resilience is a much more important subject these days, given the world that we live in. But when it comes to the, let's say, resilience and the definition of that, there is some confusing regarding concepts. Sometimes we talk about resilience, but also resistance or preparedness. And there's also other aspects that are mentioned in the debate. The way I see it is that it includes an ability to face major disruptions in society. And those, let's say, disruptions are of a nature that it's not possible to calculate the probability or the consequences. So it's so-called unknown unknowns. So it's not something that you already have in your risk planning and so on. You know that there will be let's say, things happening, disruptions and so on. But this is a bit more something that it's hard to plan for. It's unknown. And examples can include like natural disasters, wars, cyber attacks, sabotage, pandemics. For example, the pandemic was kind of we were not prepared for that one. And common strategies to deal with resilience are to work on redundancy, flexibility, agility, and cooperation. And what we will dig into a little today here is how bioenergy can contribute as one of the solutions to increase the resilience of the energy system in Europe. Okay, let's go forward. Next slide. Some basic facts just to set the scene that we with bioenergy today, it's almost 60%. Sorry, a bit old statistics, but it's still in the same order. It's a big part of the renewable energy in EU today. So it's the largest source actually, but it's somewhat the least discussed. And also it delivers benefits and renews every year in Europe on European soil. And it's still also one of the few alternatives that can be applied here and now and deliver now. And the question is how to increase the deployment. There's still a window of opportunity to do that, but there's quite a significant effort to push market development and deployment. Then when it comes to transport applications, I think in the context and from, let's say, within the ET Bioenergy sphere, we talk a lot about electrification as well, which is not an alternative everywhere. It's a big alternative for passenger cars and so on, but it takes time. And there's also the fact that electrification will not happen in all transport modes. It's not suitable everywhere. And just looking at the transport system, it's obvious that it will be dependent on liquid and gaseous fuels for decades. And also it will be permanently dependent on these type of fuels for aviation, shipping, and long-distance transport. So the way I see it is that if we don't support bioenergy in transport, we are supporting a continuation of fossil fuels. So we should both have bioenergy and electrification to cut out the fossil fuels, in my view. I think that's an important aspect of this. We can go to the next one. In this, the SET plan is a central initiative. So this is the Strategic Energy Technology Plan. And that's the plan to accelerate the development and deployment of these technologies in EU. And just looking at what bioenergy can contribute here, we have the defossilization, not decarbonization necessarily, because society without carbon is quite hard. So defossilization, circular economy development, and biodiversity through sustainable practices. And also looking at the competitiveness, which is quite a recent fuss around. But it's not something new, of course. But here you have energy independence, job creation, innovation, economic growth, and technology advancements. That's where bioenergy can contribute, in my view. Take the next one. And then going forward, I believe that the need now to have even more, let's say, resilient and also increasing the energy security in Europe, that should give an even stronger case for the bioenergy. However, there are needs that the sector need, and that is a continued support for low TRL technologies, and also a clear support all the way into the market. And also supporting the first-of-a-kind plants that will lead to commercial plants. On the right side, you see that's the value chains of ET Bioenergy that we monitor and try to push to the market, to the different sectors on the right side. And also, of course, there is a, let's say, imminent need of, and there is, of course, a lot of initiatives to also do that, but to phase out fossil fuels and especially phase out Russian energy imports. There is still quite a lot of imports directly and indirectly to EU. And also we have replaced some of the fossil energy from Russia with other fossil energy, which is also perhaps not the most stable, like US LNG is not also not sustainable, and of course there's a lot of questions also if it's secure. So I think this is where we need to go forward. So that was my last slide. We can go to the next one. With this introduction, I will give Timo the word. I've already introduced you, Timo, but you have a long and central role in this area. And the floor is yours, Timo.
Yes, thank you, Patrick. I will share my slides, and I will send after this. I will send to Patrick so you can have them.
Great.
So here and while I'm getting okay. So okay, you introduced the resilience very well, Patrick, and that my title is Resilience in Energy Supply Potential Contribution from Bioenergy. And I will say, let's say, almost the same things that you said, Patrick. And I'm Deputy Director General in the Energy Department, and I don't work solely with bioenergy. So I work with clean energy technology, or nowadays it's funny to say that why clean, because at least in Finland and Sweden, at least I think every new technology is clean. We don't use dirty technologies that much. But I work generally with clean energy technologies, just like in Z-Plan. So particularly in Europe. So it's not only a potential. So all the things are very. It's nice to talk about potentials, but potentials are really drawing a line on the water. So it's reality today. I'll just like Patrick emphasized, it's all very often forgotten. So whether the share of bioenergy of the total renewable is 60% or a little lower, now that PV or solar power and wind power is coming up, but still I would say that the bioenergy is at least the single biggest one renewable in Europe. So it's very often forgotten, even in Nordics, so in Finland and Sweden. So that's one thing that we have to speak. So I think that everybody in here is more or less, you are expert on bioenergy and you know all these things. So I don't think actually what I'm saying is not, it's really, firstly, it's repetition what Patrick said, and it's, I think you have heard or you know already many of these. But anyway, so bioenergy is the security. Just like Patrick said that replacing imported fossil fuel, particularly imported from Russia, it gives security. And the good thing with bioenergy, it's constant. It's 24/7, so it's 365 days a year available, and also it can be stored. So just like with wind power and PV, it's fine when it's windy or sunny, but to store it in better, you can store it in very little amount, and it's not easy to store, whereas bioenergy is much easier to store. And of course, it's renewable. And the good thing with bioenergy, it's the versatility. So either power or heat, or normally it's the both. So you don't use only power with electricity with bioenergy. Power, heat, and cooling also, and also liquid and gases, just like Patrick said. But also we have to know that bioenergy is plenty of non-energy use, which then, of course, then it's recycled. It can be then used as energy, but most of the timbers are cut in Finland and Sweden, and I think also in the whole Europe. They go either to timber or plywood or paper production. And it's all very often forgotten that all the countries have biopotential. So it's not that countries that plenty of forest have it, but also every country has agriculture, and it's many often that when you don't have so much forest, you might have more agriculture. And then also the food production, which is then part of the space. And also every country, if you don't even have a forest, and if your agriculture is modest, you will, if you have people, you have bio-based waste. So this is something to remember. And in power production side, when you have CHP production, of course it's efficient. And one thing what is more and more important is the inertia. So the spinning machines of the CHP plant that are running around, and they are part of this electric grid. And same thing with the nuclear power or any thermal power plant is that they have running machines which are spinning at the same frequency as the grid is functioning, so it's giving this inertia. And we haven't heard yet the real reason why Spain and Portugal, so Iberia Peninsula, what was the blackout caused. But at least one thing was sure, that there was not enough, they had the lack of inertia in the grid. And also this CSP production is lowering the spot prices, particularly in the winter time. So when it's cold, when if it's not windy, there's at least nuclear, there's CSP and hydropower, which keeps the spot price modest in Finland and Sweden and so on. But of course, bioenergy has restrictions. So it's always told that the bioenergy is no solution because it has limited supply, or that's true. Particularly when we talk about the forest is it's a limited, but it can be still used better. And also the technology is developing, so the more efficient use of forest means that the more and more of the biomass is left in the forest. So this is one issue, but particularly in the agriculture and waste, there's still a lot of potential. So if you Google bioenergy future or something, you can see the graphs that if it's put in the forest, bioenergy forest and bioenergy agriculture and waste, it's really the waste and agriculture part is growing up, and it's local. Of course, the biodiversity questions must be taken, of course, locally, and also globally. But it's really that if in Amazon forest, the rainforest is in discussion, then you cannot take that question so much into the Nordic forest, in the Finnish and Swedish forest. So we have a completely different forest. So in bioenergy, it's not all sunshine, but progress is still done. If you look the graphs or the picture, how the use of bioenergy in EU, it's been increasing. But the latest news, just was it yesterday, was that the Finnish power company UPM 10, it told that the Rotterdam biorefinery that it had been planned, it started maybe 22, so 4 years ago. They discussed whether it's to go to in Finland, in Kotka, or in Rotterdam, the Netherlands, and Rotterdam won, but now nobody is winning. Actually, the winner is Lappeenranta, where the UPM has the first and the only biorefinery, which they're making of the tall oil. They're making renewable diesel. It's not good, but it's realistic. But at the same time, if we compare to the hydrogen projects, which I'm also following, there's the same thing, that very few are on working. There's only one 20 megawatt electrolyzer running in Finland, and then plenty of them are in planning, but there are no final investment decisions on any major hydrogen projects. And also I have to say that the changing of the blending quotas, what has happened recently in Finland and Sweden, road transport, they are neither encouraging. So any changes, whether it's in a good way, it's not good for when the government is doing it. So it's not the investment climate is not perfect in that way. But if you look, let's say, in a longer perspective, if you look at when the bioenergy, the biofuels in road transport were introduced, and how they've been developing, they are doing well. So if you see the other alternatives where it's are giving so that there's no place for bioenergy as there are other renewables. So if you see the electric vehicles, just like Patrick told that problem with the battery electric vehicle, and I know Patrick is, but it's still not the whole solution. It's not the only silver bullet. And e-fuels, just like I told, there are plenty of projects, but it will be just like the last week, the Commission published the outcome of the second hydrogen bank auction, and Finland get 1 project, and there were altogether 15 projects. And if you see the dates where they're expecting them to be online, they are between the mid-28 and 2030. So this round is now, which is now, if they make the agreement in September, they make their final investment in maybe in a year, they will be coming online by 2030. So it will be a long time before we will get any e-fuels, or it's in a bigger amount. And the same thing with the hydrogen. And wind and solar, yes, they are coming online, but the more and more they are coming. So I just referred to the Spanish Portuguese blackout. They might give a problem. And also if you say that the batteries are solution, so the batteries can store the electricity from the sunny and windy days, but they are still expensive, and the batteries so far in the whole EU, they are really one drop of in the ocean, so they are not helping that much. And nuclear is one thing that the building or the project time are so long that it's not so there's no fast solutions available. Actually, this one, so the bioenergy is really fastest, or at least one of the fastest, because it's available. The technology is there, the sources are there, and so the bioenergy will give work, just like it was said, and it does it not only the construction. So if you compare to the PV project, so then the most of the work is done in the construction, but then not later. But in the bioenergy, it's the other way around. So it's in the collection you get locally very much of thing. So if I look at in the crystal ball, I think the bioenergy will stay. It will evolve just like it has done from the first generation biofuels to the second generation biofuels. I see the trend is to the sustainable aviation fuel, because there's a quota that the EU should have a, let's say, good share of aviation fuel, sustainable aviation fuel. And of course, it will be done more sustainable. So no, not so much FAME anymore, but second HVO and sustainably and more efficient all the time. But also, I think the local old-fashioned use is used, where you can see me and my cousins summer smoke by the lake Saimaa. The building is over 100. I think it soon will come 150 years in few years. So with this, I will end my presentation. And if you want to have some questions, please do.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Timo. We know that you have to leave, so perhaps we should take a couple of questions now, since we are quite well on time actually. So we could see are there questions in the chat already? Do you see any of that, Annika?
Nothing in the chat so far.
We have a hand.
I think we got a hand, exactly.
We have a hand.
Okay, Frederick has raised a hand.
Yes. Thank you, Timo. I was just wondering, you mentioned SAF. Have you also looked at the marine sector? Because I saw some early projections or a prognosis that was done by a Swedish agency, and when they did the modeling, they came up with that the maritime sector would be one of the major users of bioenergy. Is it something that you can relate to, or is the modeling going somewhere it shouldn't be?
Thanks. Fredrik, you are very right. So of course, because I prepared these slides this morning actually, and I could have written with aviation, also the maritime. So this is a trend also in EU. So for instance, EU, it's now the maritime has a bigger role, for instance, in the hydrogen auction. So it was 1.2 billion euros, where 200 millions were earmarked for maritime, mostly maritime. And then all the three projects that won the maritime part, they were from Norway, where actually the Commission, I don't go into the details, but Commission made a mistake. And firstly, I thought that the Finland get two projects and Spain get the others, and they had the wrong country codes after the projects. But anyway, now it's so that the Norway has this maritime, and it's a big one. So this is one trend that EU is looking very much of the maritime sector and aviation. And I know one thing also is that it's now the industry. So finally, Commission is understanding that it's not only the road transport or the power sector, but also the industry needs to decarbonize. Or if it doesn't decarbonize, it either is dead in Europe, or then it is just transferred to outside of Europe. So these are the sectors now. So the industry, maritime, aviation, but still at the road transport. So in the road transport, for instance, still plenty of cars are running on internal combustion engines. So there we need also sustainable fuels.
Thanks.
And the good thing with the electric vehicles is the more and more electric vehicles are coming up. So then the use of liquid fuels is getting smaller and smaller. And especially then the share of diesel is growing up. So the diesel can then be easily replaced very much above the 10%, where in gasoline it's really limited to the E95 E10.
Yeah. Thanks, Timo. I think it's clear shipping is one of the permanent users of bioenergy going forward, in my view. Okay, so thanks, Timo. We will go on in the agenda, and now it's David's turn from RISE. So the floor is yours, David.
Thanks a lot, Patrick. Thanks. So I assume you have all my pictures, Annika. So if I say click, you change. Good. Yeah. So I'm starting off by saying I'm working at RISE, and this is RISE in short. And what I would like to emphasize here is the 3,300 employees is one, and also the test bed and demonstration environments where we have more than 150 pieces of infrastructure to be used in innovative work in research and development projects. The 3,300 employees we have, I think a lot of the activities and the project within this area demands that we have a multidisciplinary structure of projects. And therefore we have a lot of different areas that we cover with the employees. And also we have quite a lot of infrastructure that can be used then together with companies, together with society. We can use the test beds and demonstration environments that we have, and we have quite a lot, as you can see. So those two things I would like to highlight with RISE. Click. So we have been discussing this already, so I'm kicking maybe in some open doors here, but we have carbon-rich raw materials actually already today available And one thing that we have been discussing here, of course, is the biomass. And biomass can come in a lot of different fractions. You have the forestry sector, of course, you have the branches and cones, you have residual stream from the sawmills and from the pulping industry in forms of bark and sawdust and stuff like that. And also, of course, you have the agricultural sector if you're looking at the most southern parts of Europe mostly. So you can have residual streams like lignocellulosics from the agro sector. But also one important area is recycling, of course, where you can have, for instance, plastic materials, you can have composites, you can have different types of residual streams or even waste streams that you can use as carbon-rich raw materials. And something that has, if it's more new, or I don't really think it's not a new thing, but it's coming up more and more, of course, and what we are thinking about is the carbon dioxide that is actually leaving all the industrial sites, more or less. So CCU, carbon capture utilization, is of course also an interesting, so carbon dioxide is of course also an interesting feedstock. Click. So with that in hand, also I would like to highlight a big investment project that we have been running over the last year here at RISE. So actually our owners, the government, gave us a task to further refine and build up the infrastructure within the biorefinery area to enable us to work with scale up and follow the stakeholders a longer way on the journey towards commercialization of building up new processes, new products, and new value chains. And I'm actually situated in Örnsköldsvik, and you see the picture in the bottom there. You see our brand new pilot hall that was built in this project. So actually, you even see my window where I sit. So it's we are very proud of this. So you can take click. So what are we investing in, and what are we doing then? The processes that we have invested in and that we already have in place is the pulping process, chemical and thermochemical processes, and we have carbon capture and storage utilization. And one of the major areas where we have put a lot of our investment in is in industrial biotechnology. And of course, all these different process areas where we are investing connect and couple to different product categories, such as biochemicals, it could be bio-based materials, biofuels, food and feed, and so on. So that is super important. Click. So this is actually a bit interesting slide. So sorry, it's in Swedish, but you don't have to read what it says. But a visionary history, it's on the top here. And this was actually done in 1945 in Sweden. So of course we had a lack of raw material flows in Europe during that time. So instead of using the traditional raw materials, in this case we used ethanol from the sulfite process. So actually it's ethanol from the hemicellulosic part of wood that is not included in the pulp. So by fermentation to ethanol, we followed up by doing chemistry. So actually in 1945, over 90 different chemicals were produced from ethanol. So what we could do then, of course, we can do now, but even more effective than we did back in the 40s. And this is absolutely the resilience question. What do we do when we don't get the raw materials? We invent something else. And this is one, I think, exciting and interesting example of what we did back in the 40s. This was actually done in Örnsköldsvik, by the way, by a big company called Modo. So click. So about chemistry then, I would say pyrolysis, gasification, hydrothermal liquefaction, carbonizations, upgrading, and process development is key parts for us in this. And click. So you can imagine that we have a lot of different opportunities in building up new value chains. And to the left, of course, you can see the feedstock, and you have the agriculture residuals like straw, for example. You have even waste. You have used tires. You can use branches and cones from the forestry side, and by different types of initial, let's call it, processes like pyrolysis or different type of hydrothermal treatment or gasification. You can end up with then a pyrolysis oil or a syngas or a biocrude that you can further upgrade towards chemicals and fuels. And in this scenario, this is just picking some of them. You of course have other techniques also, like anaerobic digestion, for example. So of course you can build up a lot of different value chains using the techniques and the equipment that we have in pilot scale. But of course gasification and pyrolysis is also available at full scale at industrial scale. So we have the possibility to use these techniques also at larger scale. Click. It's my son calling. I'm super sorry. One example here is just giving one example. Using sawdust, we can use pyrolysis or hydrothermal liquefaction to get some kind of bio-oil. And after that, we have stabilized the oil by a special technique that's called slurry hydrocracking, using hydrogen in this case. Then we end up with a stabilized oil where we can utilize a fixed bed hydroprocessing and ending up then with the product. And the product is then a mix of different products, diesel, gasoline, and SAF, and maybe also some naphtha for the chemical industry. So this is, of course, raw material that is available, and it is techniques that are available at large scale. Click. Carbon dioxide I also mentioned as a interesting raw material feed. So we have built up capture, enrichment, and conversion technologies at RISE. So click. So very, very short. We have one equipment for capture, one equipment for purification and liquefaction, and also one test bed for utilization that we built up just recently with electrochemistry. So by adding electrons to carbon dioxide, you can produce alcohols or oxidize, reduce different carbon dioxide in a different way towards energy carriers and chemicals. Click. Biotechnology, as I mentioned, one of the big areas where we are putting our efforts now is this area, and that is, you can divide it in 3 different stages. So it's the strain development, where you can actually manipulate microorganisms and develop them towards high producing units. And of course, the high producing units is used then in the fermentation step. And one thing that is utmost important is to have the downstream processing in place to actually be able to fish out the component that you are aiming for. Click. So just to highlight there what we have all the possibility all the way from agar plates in the lab. You have shake flask, you have lab bioreactors, pilots, and also in as the final spot, we have up to 10 cubic meters fermentation vessels. So this is actually a small, the largest one is actually a very, very small, but still almost a production unit. And this equipment up to 10 cubic meter is also food approved, so we can enter the food value chains with this equipment as well. Click. No, this is one example also that is it's fascinating, more or less. You can use wood and residual streams from the forestry sector, from the agriculture sector, from the food value chains, and you can use these residual streams actually to do fermentation towards a single cell protein. And this, what you see at the picture, is a filamentous fungi that is used then to replace fish meal in fish feed. And then you feed the fish, and this fish here is called tilapia. And we have tried also salmon, we have tried Arctic char, we have rainbow trout, and a lot of different fish species that has been tested with this replacement of the fish meal. And they grow very well, and then we slaughter them and end up with a nice plate of fish that we can eat, of course. So this is how you circumvent the problem that we cannot eat wood. So click. With that, I think I'm done. And what I would like to emphasize as well here together with stakeholders. And of course, RISE is not doing this solely on their own. We need to have input. We need to have collaboration partners, both from the industrial side, of course, but also municipalities, government, and other type of stakeholders. But absolutely, we can build up these new resilient value chains through innovations. So thanks for me.
Thanks a lot, David. Very interesting. We will wait for questions until the discussion.
Yeah, so, no problem.
Thanks. You. Now we will let Marcus Millinger, also from RISE, into this. So, Marcus, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Patrik. Just share. No, I think you can see the slide.
Yes.
Great. Yeah, and thanks for the invitation. And yes, as Patrik said, I'm also from RISE. I've been here since October last year, and before that I was at Chalmers. So what I'm presenting is work. It was mostly done at Chalmers when I was at Chalmers, but partly also recently. And it's a paper that was published now in January in Nature Energy. So I'm trying to summarize it and give some resilience aspects to that paper. And yeah, it's a paper work in collaboration with colleagues at Chalmers and the Technical University of Berlin. So let's see, I can change the slide. Yeah, as many of you have already talked about, it's that biomass is a limited resource, and somehow we need to think about how to prioritize it to also reduce risk in terms of biodiversity or land use change or so on. Before the Renewable Energy Directive, the third one, was finalized, there was a proposal to actually exclude forest residues as a sustainable resource. It was not in the end done like that, but it was a serious proposal, and I would argue that I mean, that might make sense from a forest perspective and looking at only the forest, but there is then carbon and biomass missing in the energy system, and I think we didn't have enough material to judge what effect that has in the energy system. So, this work addresses the question of, okay, what if we have different levels of biomass? What effect does it have on the energy system? And another question is, of course, what is a cost-effective use of biomass? And in this case, we focus on residues. And obviously, fuels has been mentioned. We also talk about variation management. So I think the case of Spain was also mentioned, and inertia. We're not looking into inertia here, but variation management, how to fulfill energy or supply the demand even when we, like in the winter, when it's not windy, for instance. Of course, industry needs it also as a feedstock, but also as a heat source. And then increasingly, we're talking about negative emissions, which obviously biogenic carbon is a big candidate for. So how do we prioritize here? That's sort of the umbrella question for this paper. Just very shortly on the model, we have used the method. So it's an energy systems model that includes all important sectors that use energy. So electricity, heat, transport, industry, and also chemicals. It's open source, so anyone can check it out, and it's growing very quickly in collaboration all across Europe and beyond. So we have here relatively high resolution, both spatially and in temporally. So which means that we can also assess variability in energy systems that are very dominated by solar and wind, and analyze the role of biomass in such a system. What I'm presenting here is our scenarios where we're looking at net negative target for this total energy system, the European. So of minus 110% compared to 1990. And yeah, we have basically a competition of biomass in all sectors. This you saw different pathways in the presentation before, and this also depicts that many different routes that biomass can take, and also the different competing options, both fossil and electricity based. So we have e-fuels. We also have e-biofuels, which I think might be important in terms of resilience. And they can all be connected to carbon capture to some extent. Our biomass assumptions, very shortly, basically we assume residues, and we kind of conservative on the domestic residues. We use a medium scenario from JRC, but we expand that with something we call imports. It could also be that we expand into more domestic residues. Yeah, I think that's probably enough about that, and then let's get to the result. So what we have done, we have looked at something called near optimal solutions. So mostly these kind of studies look at the optimal solution, like the least cost solution that can fulfill all the targets. But then we don't really know how diverse are different solutions when, if you allow a little bit more cost, maybe you can have a very different system that supplies the same thing. So that's what we've been looking at, and then we obtain these feasibility or solution space, the feasible solution spaces for different options. So this is the feasible solution space for biomass altogether in the energy system. So here we have the least cost solution, and we have some 3,500 terawatt hours of biomass in Europe, which is about 29% of primary energy, and the rest of the primary energy is wind, solar, and some hydro. So it's a very renewable system. But then what happens if we, because this might be hard to obtain, as you can see, it's quite a bit above the total bioenergy in 2021, and if we would leave it at the medium residue potential that we use as a base, it's even lower. So obviously, reaching the 3,500 terawatt hours comes also with more risk and more trade-offs that have to be taken into consideration. So what happens if we reduce the amount of biomass that is available? So basically, if we limit it roughly to current use, it's about the system would cost about 5% more, which might be an okay trade-off depending on what kind of risk we are talking about increasing the biomass here. But if we exclude biomass altogether, then we end up with a 20% higher energy system. So we're really exploring the whole range of different biomass usages here. And 20% might sound like it's not a huge deal, but it is, and you can view it like that. It's about 1% of GDP. So it's something that we arguably, I think, could pay if we really want to avoid biomass in the energy system. But it is very much in the energy system. So it's the same as a similar amount as when we completely exclude wind power or electrolyzers, which are, as Patrick also talked about, very much talked about sources, whereas biomass is not. So it's really on par in terms of value here. And the reason is really because it brings carbon to the system. The other ones do not, or the alternatives, like we are also including direct air capture as a non-fossil carbon source. But that's very expensive compared to bioenergy with carbon capture, so, or biomass in general. So it actually does drive up cost a lot to exclude biomass. Yeah, so the role of carbon capture we find is quite important. So in the least cost solution, again, we have like 900 megatons of carbon capture in Europe, which corresponds to 21% of the greenhouse gas emissions today, or 2021. And most of the biomass is then linked to carbon capture, even though it is expensive, but if we don't make use of the carbon in the biomass, we end up with a more expensive system. So carbon capture, the investment is high, and there is also a substantial energy penalty, but still it is cost effective. So in this case, we can, leaving out bioenergy with carbon capture increases the cost by 30%. And yeah, the reason is why this is valuable is it really strongly enhances carbon efficiency and the value of biomass. So if we don't have carbon capture, or if we don't utilize the carbon, then it's actually cheaper to remove biomass from the system. And so carbon capture is one. Another option to enhance the carbon efficiency is through e-biofuels, basically adding hydrogen to the biofuel process, so we can balance out the mismatch of carbon to hydrogen in the biomass compared to the fuel. So we can actually make more use of the carbon in the biomass. I think it was also mentioned that, I mean, obviously we have biomass now, but many of the other options like e-fuels and direct air capture, we don't. So I would argue that e-biofuels is it might bring resilience. So if we start with biofuels, we can later add the component of like adding hydrogen to the process and then enhance the carbon usage. So it's a more sequential investment in that case. Yeah, so another thing we find, we've also looked at the individual usage of biomass, and just very shortly, we find that we do have a least cost, basically result, which is biofuels. Most of the biomass goes to produce biofuels, some process heat, but we don't have any CHP. But for the solution spaces, we find that within quite a small cost increase, we can actually have quite large ranges of these technologies. So that leads us to conclude, and other things leads us to conclude that it's actually not as important what biomass is used for, as long as the carbon is utilized. There's one exception, and that's I'm sorry to flash you with this, but so this is the variability over the whole year. And what I want you to focus on here are the red bars above the 0 line. That is flexible bioenergy in the electricity supply. And they're basically, and this is for January, they're basically barely used, but they provide a lot of value to the system. And I would say that's also a resilience aspect to this. So they provide backup power, which turns out to be a very valuable use of biomass. It doesn't use a lot of biomass, but yeah, it's a very important part of the system. So I hope I'm on time. So as I said, like removing biomass residues increases cost by a lot. So in this case, 20%. If we look at the net zero case, to say the figure is 14%. And the reason is that main reason is that biomass produces or provides carbon. So in the long term, the value of biomass shifts. Like now we value it for the energy that it provides, but in the future the carbon might actually be what drives the value of biomass. So the question is how do we get from now to this future? And yeah, I don't have an answer to that, but that's an interesting question. And as I said, dispatchable backup powers, it turns out to be very valuable, but otherwise it's less important what biomass is used for. With maybe one caveat though, because if you don't put it in fuels, you would have to produce biofuels, and then you need to scale up electricity supply, you need to scale up hydrogen, electrolyzers, and you still need a lot of carbon. And that might be very challenging to scale up. So my personal view is that maybe this cost is not the main driver here, but the risk of like not having biomass as a resource that makes us rely much more on even higher scale up of other technologies where there's also a lot of resistance. So basically we're making it harder to achieve any net zero or net negative target. yeah, skip that. And yeah, one final point is basically renewable chemicals and liquid fuels we see as the most challenging part of the energy system. So that's where, if we have less biomass, that's where things happen. Or if we have less electrolyzers, that's where biofuels have to step up, and so on. So that it's basically on the margin, so to speak. And yeah, that's very briefly a summary of the paper, but please read it for more details, and I'm happy to discuss.
Thanks a lot, Marcus. Really interesting. Now I will make a short summary, and then we will go into the discussion. So big thank you to all the speakers. I think it was very interesting. I've taken some notes here on the side. I think it's from Timo's presentation. You saw there's a significant timeline. That also it's a calendar that we have to look at, and bioenergy is one of the fastest that could deliver on this timeline. We need to turn the climate change and our emissions now. So we can't wait for a nuclear plant that is ready in 15 years. I think that's also a key takeaway. And I think also from David here, you saw in 1945 we had a very detailed roadmap, and also the nice, let's say, walk around on how to eat wood is really nice. So I think we can do, and that's what's challenging in bioenergy also. It's a very wide system approach that needs to combine everything. And I think it's also really nice what we heard from Marcus here. It's also confirmed some of my earlier, so that's always nice. But I think this of feeding in the hydrogen that you have, if you produce hydrogen from electrolysis and you have a bio plant running, a biofuel plant running, we have seen that you can increase the, let's say, the output from that biofuel plant by introducing that hydrogen significantly. And what it basically does, it increases the carbon efficiency of the system as such. So I think that's a very interesting aspect. And also we have been following the CHP area for many years and looking what's happening with the development of large-scale efficient CHP. And we also wrote in the last year's Strategic Energy Technology Plan report that there's a clear role for CHP in the balancing of grids, like we saw in January in Marcus' chart. But the question is, how do you get paid for that? What is the business model? It's a big value, but it's a short-term value, and who pays for the, let's say, other months when the plant might have a direct competition with solar and wind and so on. So, but it's once again a system approach that is needed, and also, yeah, what Marcus presented here is really key research to look at the system. And I would also agree that it's very challenging to solve the energy puzzle, especially in the liquid fuels area and the transport sector. That was also one of the reasons I started with it more than 25 years ago, why I was interested in looking into that. But yeah, that's another story. But yeah, with that, I will open up for questions and comments. And do we have